Yo, what is going on, you guys? So today I'm bringing you guys episode one of our sports card talk. In today's first episode, we've got three very special guests over here. You guys can go ahead and introduce yourselves, but we got Ohm, aka Cinematic Sports Cards. We got Jerry, and then we got Chase over here. So a lot of different perspectives. We've got some people coming from more of a collecting side. We got some people, of course, all of us do love to invest and see a lot of opportunity in the market. But yeah, you guys can take it away.
Yeah, so
Sure.
I'll go ahead, Chase.
Good. No, you go ahead, man. You're good.
All right. My name's Ohm, or on Instagram, I'm known as Cinematic Sports Cards. And I guess we're going to start off by saying how we got into cards. So I got into cards by just randomly seeing some TikToks about sports cards and how much opportunity there was. So I started grading cards back in September 2019, and I was just finding opportunities where cards that would grade high or had a high gem rate, I would just buy a bulk of those, send them, and I would get them back in about 20 days when the grading turnaround times were actually, accurate. And I would probably like 4 or 5x my money every month until COVID happened, and then grading got shut down. So I kind of had to shift my strategy. And so that's when me and Kunal, or Sports Card Invest, started buying up cards together, and you know, yeah, that's where we're at
Cool.
now.
Rest is
Just scaling up into higher end cards.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
So yeah.
So I'll go next, I guess. I'm Chase. My Instagram's crhymes23. I got into sports cards at a young age. As a kid, I collected, and then my first job was in a sports card shop when I was about 13, 14 years old. Basically throughout high school, I worked in the sports card shop, and I started as kind of like an assistant. Where I learned about kind of how to, when cards came in, how to judge if they were mint or near mint or gem mint, just because everything was raw back then. You had to have a really good eye for that kind of thing. And then I was like this assistant there, and then eventually, like, the guy that ran the division in this comic shop, the sports card division, he like got an argument with the owner, and they just like fired him. And then it was just me. So they were like, you just take care of everything. You're doing a good job. So I just ran this little sports card department, and I used to buy all the wax. I used to grade all the cards, that came in, and purchase them and do trades with customers. So it was a really good way to like kind of learn the market. I'd go to shows. The TriStar shows were really popular here, so did a lot of that. Just got experience, like, from not just being a collector of cards, but also like kind of like the business behind cards a little bit at an early age. And then kind of gave it up. I had built a really good collection, sold most of it, and kind of went on to my life. And then a couple years ago, I got back into the space, just got interested in it again, partly out of nostalgia and partly because I was kind of surprised with, kind of some inefficiencies that I saw, like, kind of in the market. And so I kind of started buying heavily based on those, and was able to grow kind of a multi-million-dollar collection off of a relatively low amount of money. And yeah, I mean, I made millions of dollars basically doing it. So it was, you know, yeah, it's been a good run the last couple of years. That's
Nice.
kind of it.
Awesome.
Jerry, want to go?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Jerry. Instagram is AJLOUNY713. And I'm in the restaurant business. Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me today. And so I'm in the restaurant business out here in California. Chase, there on the bottom right screen, we've been friends for, over 10 years, I'd say. So about a little, almost 2 years ago, he's calling me and he's like, dude, you got to get in this, you got to get in this space. You got to start buying sports cards. And I'm just like, what is this guy talking about? Like, what do you mean we're going to spend thousands of dollars on sports cards here? Like, are you out of your mind? And I started telling people, like, thinking about, investing in some cards, and they're just like, you're going to lose every penny. Like, what are you doing? And, but anyways, I trusted Chase. He's very smart with his money. So, I invested, I don't know, 20, $30,000 into this space, and it's somewhere in the six-figure range. And it's not only about the money. I would say the best experience I had was going to the Dallas show and just making those connections and just making deals, like the exchanges are just so exciting. You know, it's just like such a free market, and I think there's just something to be said about that. You know, so I definitely recommend just anyone that's new to this, I would say just go to a show, you know, just kind of get a taste of everything, just kind of start talking to people and just get an idea of what's going on. And you know, as a child, I had sports cards, but I wasn't like crazy into it. But I mean, I definitely connected with players like Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, and collected some of their stuff. So now we're here, and you know, we've been pretty successful, and you know, I'm always up for more. So, anyways, take it away, Kunal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna ask Chase. You know, of course, Jerry said he got in from Chase. So I was gonna ask you, Chase, like, what made you, I guess, before this whole craze, when prices were, you know, quite stagnant, you know, what did you see in sports cards? What was your vision? Kind of, where did you see it going?
I didn't see opportunity everywhere at a low price point. So like relatively low. So like you could, I mean, I saw opportunity. To go, right? Because that's what they were. You have to think, like, some of the entry points for some of these cards that are going for record prices, like the 1.9 millions, those cards were already $200,000-$400,000, you know, 2 years ago, or 100,000 or 150,000 a card. So yeah, I mean, if you want to go drop a small house on a card back then and gamble, that's a big difference from what I saw. You know, what I saw in the market is I saw cards that were relatively inexpensive, priced incorrectly. And so what I really noticed in particular in basketball was that you had all this emphasis being placed on jersey auto cards, like mainly from Exquisite Set. Exquisite Set was already like a very expensive set. Like I mentioned, the RPAs were somewhere around 250, 350,000 for LeBron, and then everything kind of priced underneath there, right? But they were all like, these are all like six-figure cards, like the limited logos, the numbered pieces, etc. They were big cards. But yet the iconic rookie cards that predated Exquisite, like the 86 Fleer, like the Topps Chrome Kobe Bryant, these were the cards that built the hobby, not the Exquisite Set. All of this talk was about, oh, Exquisite is the Bentley. There was stuff that happened before Exquisite was ever around, and there wouldn't have been an Exquisite. There wouldn't even have been a basketball hobby if there wasn't these other cards. So I saw that kind of like this big discrepancy. I also saw a huge discrepancy, massive discrepancy between vintage baseball and basketball, which when you think about it, doesn't make sense given that the major demographic that's going to be spending money over the next, like, let's call it like, you know, 3 decades isn't so much a fan of vintage baseball, right? And they're also, baseball is not nearly as important to them or as popular as basketball is globally, right? To this demographic. So that doesn't really make sense. If a Mickey Mantle rookie 2 years ago was $10 million for a PSA 10, why is a Jordan rookie 30 grand, even if there's 300 of them? You know, shouldn't it at least be 300 grand or 500 grand? I mean, he's 100 times more popular. And even if the pop is 300, Mickey Mantle pop 3, he's 100 times more popular. So technically, you know, like I could see a Jordan being $3 million because he's 100 times more popular, you know, and Jordan only has like this one really iconic rookie card. He's got other ones, but there's just one that's head and above the heels of the rest for 35 years. So that was one thing. Another thing I kind of noticed was I remembered when I was a kid that some of these prices in vintage baseball spiked about 30 years to 35 years after children that collected them would have been adults. So like the Mickey Mantle, for example, that card came out in 1952. It didn't spike in value in a 9 into the $20,000 range until the 1990s. Actually, a PSA 10 in the 1990s would have been, you know, $60,000 to $90,000, right? It's now a $30 million card today. But at that time, it was like a $60,000, $70,000 card. A 9 may have been 15, 20, maybe 20 in the mid 20s for a really nice copy, maybe. You know, but that was unheard of. That was news articles when that card was selling for those prices. And people said at that time that it hit a peak, you know, that the Mantle, it's hit 20,000, it's, you know, a peak, whatever. And I kind of thought, well, why did it rise in the 90s all of a sudden? Why did it go from being relatively stagnant for all those years, 50s up until the 90s, and then it popped in the 90s? Well, that was because kids that were children in the 1950s are now adults 35 to 45 years old. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're business people, and they're nostalgic and they wanted those cards. The rise in the Mantle's value was very organic to people that really just wanted to own something from their childhood. It wasn't an investment play as much as it was something that they just really wanted and coveted, and it's not like they were bullish on the sports card space as much as they were nostalgic about the cards. And I kind of thought, well, if Jordan changed the entire world, literally like as a cultural phenomenon, the way that, Nike basically helped build that company, his impact on the globe as a famous person. He's one of the most famous people to ever walk planet Earth. He was, I think, for 4 or 5 years, the most famous person on planet Earth, like according to polls. This is an extremely important human being. I have nothing against Mickey Mantle, but it's a whole nother level when you're talking about the legacy of MJ and how he's going to be remembered. I mean, it's only analogous to Babe Ruth or something of that nature, mythical, a giant. So, yeah, I mean, I would put him at 100 times more important than Mickey Mantle, 100 times more popular. So what does that mean? Well, it means that if Mickey Mantle can get to $30 million, in a PSA 10 now, or back then to 10 million, as it was at the time, I thought, well, these iconic rookie cards in Jordan and also Kobe seem to have like a lot of runway. Whereas, these other cards that are like a LeBron James, like RPA, okay, that's a great card. It's super limited. I get it. It's exquisite. I'm not knocking the card, but I mean, the Jordan card really brought people into basketball to collect it as a sport. At the time when I got into the hobby as a kid, I remember going to a sports card shop and asking them, why don't you have basketball cards? They said, well, they stopped making them. They literally stopped making basketball cards for 2 years because of licensing things, but also mainly because people didn't want them. Like, nobody bought basketball cards. If you went to a card shop back in the 1990s and the early 90s before the basketball boom, no one even carried basketball. It would be analogous to like finding soccer cards. I mean, it was just like nobody cared about it. It was not, you looked at a case, 90% of it would have been baseball. You may have a little bit of basketball, but they hated it because like no one cares about it because the collectability of sports cards has its heart and roots in baseball. That all changed when Michael Jordan entered the league. When Michael Jordan entered the league and took the league by storm, he brought people out of baseball collecting, out of other sports, out of other interests, into wanting to collect baseball cards. It's what also led the boom in all these basketball sets, Upper Deck, Skybox, Fleer Skybox, all the spin-offs like Fleer Flare and all, just, all the cards that came out in the 90s the whole hobby was based on Jordan, and the rise of the hobby was really anchored in Jordan. And he was super important to creating the interest that fueled the demand that led to the creation of all of that product that made 90s basketball card collecting so nostalgic today for so many people. So my point being is that, like, I don't think there would have even been a basketball market that Upper Deck would have gambled so much on LeBron if Jordan didn't come before that, because he set a precedent that, wait a second, if a player comes along and takes the league by storm, this product will fly off the shelves because people want to own a piece of that, right? Mm-hmm. So why Kobe was so important was that as Jordan was kind of tapering off, Kobe kind of carried the torch until LeBron got into the league. He was really the guy that carried it and kind of kept it kind of alive, the league alive. And the Chrome set changed basketball forever. The 96 Chrome is such an important card. And I'm not trying to pump it because I do own these cards, but the reason I saw that card as something to buy 2 years ago and spend like a record amount of money on it at the time, I set like the all-time high, I think, for when I bought the card, because I thought that refractor, that Kobe refractor and that set was important because, number one, it led to Prism, which dominates the whole hobby today. But number two is it was kind of a symbolic switch from paper cards, that we saw a lot in the 80s to like the first really, really popular, well done kind of modern set that we went completely kind of to this chrome finish. Now, they experimented with finest and things like that before. They played around with the technology, but it really, really caught fire from a high price point standpoint. with the chrome. That's another important thing, is that box was expensive at the time. It was
Yeah.
kind of a luxury price point, and it succeeded.
So
So
I got a question.
yeah.
So you said a little bit ago, you said basically, you're saying when the Jordan Fleer card came out, that's what really pushed basketball cards?
Yeah, because basketball cards weren't even produced from like 84, 85, 83, 84. They stopped making basketball cards completely.
But
That's
I thought they had trouble selling those sets. Like I thought
they did. They did at first because because Jordan had come into the league. He was uber popular, but he hadn't taken fire as a cultural phenomenon quite yet.
Yeah,
It took a little bit of time. It was about, I would say, around 1990, what I would start to say, when he started to compete and won his first championship, that I think Jordan really, and the Nike campaigns really went kind of completely.
So it didn't really change. It didn't really change the basketball market in '86. You're saying it changed in 1990?
No, it was like late '80s that it started. It was about 1990 though that it really caught on, and collectors were shifting out of baseball into basketball, and new collectors were coming in and wanting to own Jordan. Everything was centered around Jordan. By that time, the Fleer card had been out for a few years by the time that this had happened. So you're right. At first, in '86, when the Fleer set first came out, it was nobody cared about it. Much like when the Mantle came out, they the famous story about the 52 Tops is like they threw away half the supply, they dumped it in the river, all the boxes, because they couldn't sell it. And it was like everybody had sent it back to Tops, and they had so much in the office, it was taking up all the space. They just dumped it in the Hudson River, like half of the supply of all the Tops product. And so that's famous. They used to have to go to these circus performances where kids would be and try to like push the boxes on kids. Like, will you buy this crap? Nobody wanted the Mantle. Nobody in the world wanted the 52 Mantle when it came out. But when Mickey Mantle became an icon, and when sports card collecting caught on to children, which happened a couple years after that, when Tops started to realize we need to get this in the hands of children, and we need to make this a pastime for children, adding the bubble gum and all that different stuff that they kind of did. That's when the product really kind of took on, and kids were putting them in their bicycle spokes. They were playing with the Mantles. They remember the Mantle. Famous image on the 52 Tops. It's much more attractive than the Bowman, which came out first. Similar to Jordan. Jordan had a star that came out before, an uglier card, a much less attractive card, not a very memorable card. He's getting a rebound on the card. Anybody that tells you that the star card won't be valuable, but anybody tells you that the star card is ever going to surpass the Fleer, just look at the situation with the Mickey Mantle Bowman that came out in '51 and the Tops that came out in '52. So like the Bowman came out before the Tops, so that's his true rookie, but it's an undersized card, which has never been popular, and it's not that aesthetically pleasing as the 52 Mantle is. So the 52 Mantle is always going to be the reigning king, in my opinion, because of that. Just like the Jordan Fleer is always going to be the reigning king. It's a very similar situation. Yeah, a basketball. Yeah, it's a very similar situation.
And the new wave, which is really interesting to kind of see what really drove the new wave. A few of the cards at the forefront of the new wave were, Luka Doncic, Giannis, who are a lot younger, or obviously many people have, aspirations for them that they're going to be, the next LeBron, the next MJ. And of course, we went decades without, MJ caliber player, right? Before the 90s, it wasn't really, we've been extremely lucky to have MJ, Kobe, and LeBron.
The league never saw anybody quite like MJ. I mean, there was guys that were certainly in the conversation. I mean, Magic and Bird really saved the NBA before MJ got there, and MJ wouldn't have even had the stage to impress people if Magic and Bird didn't really set the table for him to come in and do that. They're extremely important, but we never really saw a player like Michael Jordan before he was around. There was guys that had some of the same features that he had. I mean, Dr. J was electric and could play the game with a style and an artistry that like Jordan did. There was guys that competed hard like Bird. There's guys that had the winning caliber and the charisma like Magic Johnson. But I think Michael Jordan put it all into one and really took the league to that next level. And I think we've been blessed and spoiled because we've had a Kobe Bryant and a LeBron James follow MJ. And I think that the the narrative is that every 10 or 15 years we get a generational athlete. And I don't believe that that's a guarantee. I think people should remember that this sport has a long history, and in like all sports, they go through lulls. You know, I mean, boxing is not a team sport, but there's been times when the heavyweight division's on fire and we have these epic fighters going at each other. And there's periods where you have Klitschko, like a non kind of charismatic, sort of not a generational fighter, but a good fighter nonetheless, and that can kind of carry the fighting space for a while. But he doesn't. It's not a Tyson era. You know, it's not a Muhammad Ali era. You know, it's not a Sugar Ray Leonard era like in the other divisions. You know, it doesn't have that. And so I'm saying it's not a guarantee that you're going to have somebody that's ever going to be on the level of a Kobe, LeBron, or Jordan. It's not a guarantee. You may have guys that lead the league, you know, that are impressive. I remember when Jordan left, you know, I mean, there was guys in the league that really got the limelight, you know, and it was a time for guys like Olajuwon and to some extent, you know, guys like Penny Hardaway and Shaq and Grant Hill and Jason Kidd and all these up and coming guys to kind of get the spotlight and get a lot of the attention. But I don't think any of those guys people put on the same level as Jordan, Kobe, or LeBron. And there was a period of 2 years there where we didn't have one. I mean, I think Akeem Olajuwon's one of the greatest players of all time, and my top center of all time, just given what he did. But people don't put him in that conversation, you know. And so when I get back to Luka and Giannis and all these guys, I mean, they may have a lot of hype with them, and they're in the short term, their values may go up a lot in Zion and stuff. But if they don't make that Mount Rushmore long term, I mean, what significance is it really?
Why, right? I mean, it's going to be very interesting to kind of see what Prism does this year when it releases, because if they keep at this rate, right? Like 2017 Prism was high pop, but not, you know, close to where we're at right now with Zion. And so just think about Shaq. Everyone considers him such high pop. He's like what 1/15 the pop of, you know, someone like Luka. And Shaq's tops rookie card is around $1,000 in a PSA 10, and that's Shaq, right? Like, where's the upside if you're buying Luka?
That's again, I go like here and I tell everybody all the time. I say the same thing. You know, either if you're a fan of Luka, Giannis, or any of this modern stuff, okay, it's either one of two things. It's either this stuff is extremely, extremely, extremely overvalued, okay, or the other stuff that you're talking about, like the Beam Team, Shaq, the Jordan, that stuff is extremely undervalued. But it cannot be both. So here's what I have to say: if you're pro Luka, pro Giannis, right, in my opinion, and you believe in those prices, then man, you should be scooping up all that other stuff because it's super cheap compared. If you have a Luka Gold Prism rookie card go for $800,000, then oh my God, you should be buying Kobe Topps Chrome rookie refractors for sure. If you think that that's real, because if you think that Luka Doncic is going to be able to match Kobe Bryant, I'll take that bet with anybody on earth. Anybody that wants to make a bet with me, I'll take it.
Chase, don't you think these younger guys, I mean, you know, even like Jordan and Olajuwon, they were before my time, even though I connect with, you know, Jordan and Olajuwon just by hearing, you know, stories about them. And obviously, you know, everyone knows who Jordan is. This young generation of collectors that are coming in, they didn't really see these guys play.
Yeah,
so,
I think
you know, that
point.
plays into it as well.
And there's
exciting about that.
That adds an excitement and a gambling aspect to it. It makes it more fun.
Right?
But just because it makes it more fun doesn't mean it's going to be more financially lucrative. And to the point about the past is, who's buying Babe Ruth cards now? Is anybody buying Babe Ruth cards? Watch Babe Ruth play? He seems to be pretty much on fire right now, right? Like who's buying who's buying Jackie Robinson? Is anybody that owns a Jackie Robinson card?
I don't think that many people. Go ahead.
Let me finish. Is anybody on earth that owns a Jackie Robinson card? Did anybody watch him play? Anybody that owns one on earth? Do you think any of them watched? Not one of them.
Probably not.
He's just it's just the name. The name's iconic. I don't know anything about Babe Ruth. I don't know anything about Babe Ruth, but it's Babe Ruth. Why is it Babe Ruth?
Yeah.
So same thing with Jordan, Kobe, LeBron. Same thing with Jordan, Kobe, LeBron. They're just as, and matter of fact, I would argue more so because they had billion-dollar companies behind them pumping their brand and their story. Jackie Robinson never had that. I mean, he broke the color barrier. He has a mark in history. And that's to my next point. Sports cards, okay, in general, are historical documents, okay? They mark a period in time. If you're a fan of history, that's what sports cards do, okay? They mark a period of a player's emergence into the league with a rookie card, and they mark a point in history that documents, that this happened, okay? And that's important because if people that care about history, especially sports history, are going to have an appreciation for all of those things because they love the game. They love the game, not just the players. So
but
that's
I also
why.
do think that, with sports bettors coming into the league, with a bunch of people, you're going to see big premiums on these current guys. Maybe the older guys are more undervalued, but regardless, you're going to see this premium just because people want a Zion for the chance, right?
All it does is, though, we saw this happen a million times. When Modern gets here, when Modern gets here, it's going to bring up vintage with it because because the ratios don't make sense to people. They're like, how can this be up here when these guys are so much better and their pops are relatively low and they're marquee cards and they're down here? The ratio doesn't make sense. So I'm never a believer in the short term. I think all the Modern stuff is cash grab for the most part. Not all of it. I mean, some people really do love the players, but I think a lot of it is driven by cash grab, and I don't like that. I think that if you're a collector and you're trying to build, let's say you're trying to build you have to think about it like I'm trying to build the best basketball collection, right? If we're building a basketball card museum, what would go in there? What would deserve, to be in there? When the Metropolitan makes their museum, they pick pieces that are worthy of being in the Metropolitan, okay? And what are the qualifications for being in there? Well, it has to be a piece of work that's significant to art, that it was a significant piece in art history. The art movement usually has to have some type of major contribution to art in general. It has to be something rare, unique, obviously, that you can't just see everywhere, right? It's not going to be some kind of a mass-produced print. Usually it's going to be something that, is relatively rare. They may have a Warhol print, but he's uber popular, right? So you may have 300 or 500, but they may have that there. But they're going to pick pieces that are worthy of being in there, is my point. And when you start putting museum quality prices on some of this Modern stuff, when the player hasn't necessarily met the criteria to be in there, I have a problem with that, because granted I was a kid and the price points were low. I've seen this many times before. I've seen the story of this guy's the next Jordan. Do you know how many next Jordans there were? I mean, I can't even tell you. I mean, I'll give you the worst example. I mean, they used to call Harold Miner Baby Jordan because he reminded people of Jordan. I mean, there was Penny Hardaway, there was Grant Hill. Yeah, I mean, well, LeBron and Kobe have an argument. I mean, those guys were the only ones to ever kind of be in the same discussion.
And then, like, other players are priced in, like Zion at the beginning, as if he was the next LeBron too.
It's
like his national treasures were at like 700,000, right? Or there's those all-time high sales.
You have to ask yourself, like, why would you, if you're going to make a futures bet in Las Vegas, okay? You walk into Las Vegas, you're going to get to pay a certain amount of money and get a payout in relation to how unlikely that event is to happen, right? So if I go bet on the Milwaukee Bucks right now to win the title, I'm going to get really good payout versus if I go bet on the Lakers right now to win the title. I'm going to get a much better payout because the odds of
Milwaukee
that happening.
Bucks.
Okay, I'm saying the odds. Okay, I'll use a better example. The Knicks. Let's say the Knicks. If you're going to go make a bet on the Knicks to win the title, they're going to pay you a fortune if they win. You may get 30 grand for betting $100. Okay.
But if you bet on Zion, you're not getting. Yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying. If you bet on Zion, you're not going to get those crazy odd numbers because he's already kind of priced in with this crazy high pops, his high prices. Where's your upside, even if he turns out to be it's essentially like you're betting that you're right, but you're not seeing the money you think you're going to see.
Yeah,
the Bucks are plus 700.
Thank you guys so much for watching our first episode of our YouTube show. If you guys would like to check out part 2, you can head over to Cinematic Sports Cards channel. The link will be in the description, so you can go ahead, subscribe to him so that you can catch part 2 when it does drop on his channel. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm out. Peace.